review. As you know, I've not really been doing as many book reviews lately, but as soon as I finished this book, I knew I wanted to do a review on it. I will put it out there. This book was sent to me by Penguin. I am so thrilled that they did decide to send it to me. Firstly, because it's the first thing I've ever been sent, sort of like coming from my YouTube channel, so that was really cool. But because this is a book that I would genuinely pick up myself, it's a book that I was interested in. I hadn't actually heard of it before they sent it to me, but I'm so glad that I have it in my collection now. And I just want to talk about it with you. So even though this book has been sent to me, there was no obligation to do a review on it, nothing like that. They never even mentioned it. They were just like, we want to send you this book because it's being published in paperback this month. Should we actually talk about what the actual book is? This is The Choice by Edith Eger. Okay. Before this video, I actually went on YouTube to try and figure out how to say her last name, and I still can't say it. Edith Eger? I think it's Eger, so we're gonna go with that, and I apologise if it's not right. But this is a memoir book that she's written based around her experience with being captured in the Holocaust and being sent to Auschwitz. I very much have a strong connection and interest in reading books surrounding World War II, specifically the Holocaust. If you don't know, my dad's side of the family is Jewish, and so we have a connection to that period of time. Me and my dad have visited Auschwitz. I've been to another concentration camp, actually with my school as well. So it's a weird word to say that I'm fascinated by it, because it's such a horrific event in time, but I am quite drawn to biographies written and books written by people that have experienced it at the time. So Edith is a Hungarian Jewish girl at the start of this book, and when she's about 16 she's taken with her family into a concentration camp, into Auschwitz. So it's her mother, her father, and one of her sisters is taken in. Her other sister manages to escape, and so we learn very quickly that her parents perish and are sadly taken to the gas chambers. I don't want to spoil it too much in the sense of what happens. Obviously, because this book is here, we know she survived, which is amazing. And if you don't want too many spoilers on the actual events that happen in the book, then maybe this is not quite the review, because I am going to go into some of the events that happen and talk about my thoughts on them. But throughout this book she manages to stay with her sister, which I think is incredible, because obviously so many families are split up during their time just travelling through the camps, and of course family members dying and that, but her and her sister managed to stick through it together. Amazingly, they both came out of Auschwitz together. That wasn't the last camp that they were in, and they managed to survive it. So that's sort of the start of the story and where the book begins. I have written some notes on my phone that I can refer to. Firstly, I want to show you, they sent, obviously, in the package with the book, they sent this little envelope, and obviously I had a bit of information about the book, but there was this little envelope with this quote on it that says, "Even in hell, hope can flower." And I just thought that was, it really summarises this book perfectly. If you've read it, then you know, and I will go a bit more in depth about it, but this is just, it really resonated with me, and I'd like to hold on to this. Also, what they sent were these, which I love little touches like this just, it brought a smile to my face. They included these 3 photographs. So this is sort of pre the war, She was an aspiring gymnast and dancer, and she wanted to partake in the Olympics as well. Sadly, she obviously couldn't because they said that Jewish people weren't allowed to take part. That's another picture of her, sort of teenage years, I would say, young adult. And then a picture of her more recently. She is 90 years old. How glamorous does she look for 90 years old? Incredible. So those really like warmed my heart to see. So yes, back to the book. I will read you the back of the book just so you can get a more concise reading of what it is. It's 1944 and 16-year-old ballerina Edith Eger is sent to Auschwitz. Separated from her parents on arrival, she endures unimaginable experiences, including made to dance for the infamous Joseph Mengele. When the camp is finally liberated, she is pulled from a pile of bodies, barely alive. The horrors of the Holocaust didn't break Edith. In fact, they helped her learn to live again with a life-affirming strength and a truly remarkable resilience. The Choice is her unforgettable story. It shows that hope can flower in the most unlikely places. So, as it says, she's in the camp. She is made to dance for Joseph Mengele, and if you don't know who he is sort of said to be one of the most contributing to Auschwitz and the Holocaust, in the fact that he was the finger of death, and he, especially with Edith and her family, told them which line to line up in. And in that case, that was when her mother was sent to the gas chamber. Right off the bat, I want to say how inspiring this book is, how much resilience Edith has, and hope. Throughout the book, hope is such a big theme, and obviously from the title of the book, The Choice. There were times where most people would just accept their fate and buckle, but in the camps and on their journeys, being transported, she was able to give herself some choice. She created choice to give herself that bit of power, that although so much control had been taken away, she was able to give herself that little bit of control and say, I'm going to choose how I feel about this, how I'm going to react to this. I can either be, accept my fate and be really depressed, and then it all spirals from there. I can hope for tomorrow and just try and get through each day. And that's sort of the mantra that she had. As long as she could get through that day, as long as she could live for tomorrow, there was hope that one day they would walk out of there. And they did, which is amazing. But yeah, just that amount of strength that she had was really, really inspiring. You read these memoirs that people have written from being in the camps, and you think, how can they have so much resilience and so much hope and so much sort of forgiveness for what had happened? And I don't think we will ever know, because we weren't firsthand in that situation. But I think possibly it was the only way for them to be able to process it and deal with it, was to hang on to that bit and have that choice and that power that they could still hold on to when so much had already been taken away. And this book, even though I've read quite a few Holocaust related books, you name any of the more popular ones, I've probably read it, and this book still had aspects in it about the camps that surprised me. One of the things specifically was they would do blood fusion, like blood transplants, blood fusions from the prisoners. So they would take the prisoners' blood and then they would go and transport it to the soldiers that were on the front line who needed it, which is crazy to think about, because their whole thing was that they wanted to eliminate this race. They wanted to get rid of these people that they deemed were just a parasite to the society, yet they were quite happy to take the blood from them and use it and put it in themselves. I thought that was crazy that they even thought to do that. That really shocked me, actually. So her actual time in the Holocaust probably is only, like, I want to say the first 150 pages. The rest of it is her time after being liberated and how she's having to deal with that, how even though the war has ended and she's been liberated, it doesn't mean for her the end of pain, the end of suffering, because she's lost her family. She's physically trying to regain that strength, and also she's so unwell from the conditions, and it takes them months to get back to some sort of normal health. And also mentally, you know, that sticks with you. And she does talk about how after she was liberated, she suffered with depression. She didn't know it at the time, but she was. And then in the decades afterwards, she suffered from PTSD, and she's constantly getting those sort of flashbacks from her time in the camps. And again, the end of the war didn't end the anti-Semitism. Obviously, it's still going on today. It's a very current topic at the moment. And there were still people that she would meet every day that would be like, when she was in work, they were like, oh, don't sit with the Jew because they're dirty. And obviously they didn't know that she was Jewish. So it was still going on. Just because the end of the war, people's mindsets hadn't necessarily changed. I don't know if they will ever be changed for some people, but we can only hope that the more we carry on with telling these experiences, these stories, these events, that we can just prevent it from ever happening again. So after the war, her and her husband are able to move and immigrate to America. And again, immigration is a very topical subject at the moment, not only in America, I think in the UK as well, with Brexit and just all these more immigrants that are coming in from like Syria and places like that, where there's so much conflict still going on. And it was that aspect of this where it's like, my ancestors probably were immigrants, and if people hadn't taken them in and allowed them to travel then, when they're in such need of safety, then we wouldn't be here today. And that's something to remember. You see these children coming across on boats, and I read a quote somewhere, and it was like, you know, their situation must be bad when the water is safer than land. It was along those lines, and that really struck an impact with me, because you forget why they're fleeing. Sometimes from media and sort of news articles, we just think of them coming across and taking our benefits, using our NHS and using our facilities that are already so strained, that we forget that where they've come from must have been a hell of a lot worse for them to even want to make the journey over here, and that we are fortunate in the circumstances that we have. So again, it was topical to that as well. And it showed how she struggled to fit in. Obviously, when she moved to America, she knew very little English. Her daughter ended up even teaching her English before she took classes, and she felt, even though they were in like a Jewish neighborhood, that she didn't fit in. People that were born there were still making them feel like immigrants, and that they weren't necessarily part of their society, and they ended up having to move a couple times before they felt sort of settled in America. One thing that she said in this, which I thought was beautifully written, was about how she said that one person's pain is no greater or more important than someone else's pain. As if she was saying, obviously she went through all this, and someone today might be suffering because of a simple thing, like something that's maybe conceived as quite trivial. And she says that no one person's pain is more important, or suffering is being greater than another, because at the time that is what is important and is resonating with you. Again, it's just that aspect of her that is so caring and so just nurturing, and I think that's why she does so well. She becomes a psychologist, and she helps you read some of the accounts that she had to deal with towards the end of the book, and I think that's why she can help treat people so well, is not only she's got those events and stories that have happened to her, but she has so much compassion to see a person for who they are there and then, and to take their struggles and their troubles and appreciate that that is what they're dealing with then, and that is what they're struggling with at the time. So that was one thing that I thought was really credible of her. And it felt like when you were reading this book, when she moved to America, it was as if all those emotions, all of those feelings that she had sort of suppressed whilst in the camps, it was as if it all came out while she was in America. In the camp, she was thinking very much day to day, having to just live through the day, survive. She couldn't really think about, she couldn't sort of grieve for her family, and all those other things of what the future may hold. She was only thinking of that day-to-day aspect of getting out of bed and making sure she turned up for the roll call. Whereas when she's in America, she's got that more time to think, and things come more forefront to her mind, everything that she's had to sort of suppress, and you see more of the emotions come out while she's in America, including the sort of panic attacks and the sort of flashbacks aspects. So one thing that was very sort of timely for me is she spoke how when they were in America, they and this is like just an event that would just sort of fly over people's heads, but it made me sort of stop and think how she they said one night they splurged and went to the cinema. And if I think about it, even like from my parents, they wouldn't go to the cinema that often when they were younger because they couldn't afford it, and it was seen as a luxury. And I think today it's seen as quite a common thing to do. It's an activity that lots of people do, and it's definitely probably more accessible to a lot of people, but it is still a luxury at the end of the day. And me and Darren, even tonight, we're going to go and see Christopher Robin at the cinema, and we've paid for these extra nice reclining seats, and you get food brought to you, and it's like, what is this? It just made me stop and think that we didn't even really like think of that, we just booked it. And whereas back then, and even for our parents, it would have been something that they would have had to plan for. They couldn't have just done it spur of the moment. They would have had to get the money for, and it's that thing that it reminds you and it grounds you that you're lucky in the life that you lead, and that you can lead while you still can. So towards the end of the book, she shares how she struggles to share her past with her children. She ends up having 3 children, and she finds it quite hard, especially with her oldest, because obviously she's asking more questions, to be able to talk to her and explain what she went through. Her husband is able to sort of talk about it more matter-of-factly, and he almost like tells it to their daughter to show their daughter how fortunate they is because of what her mother had to go through, and she should be lucky that she doesn't. Whereas Edith is more just doesn't want her to pity her and feel that sadness and emotion that she had to go through, and doesn't want to inflict that into her life. She has so much love and forgiveness in her heart, and it's crazy to think, I know I said this earlier, it's crazy to think how these people can forgive these awful people that did what they did, but towards the end of the book she was even able to go to where Adolf Hitler's house was, and she was able to forgive him, not so much for him but for herself, and to have that sort of weight lifted off her shoulders. And I think you can't imagine it unless you're in that position. I know people say that they've forgiven like their children's murderers or their partner's murderers and things like that, and it's like, how can you forgive them? And I think there comes a time where they have to come to terms with it, and it gives them a sense of peace more than anything. Obviously I can't talk from a personal experience, but I think it gives them that sort of resolution in a way that they can start to not go back to a normal life, but can make a new normal, if you get what I mean. And there was a couple quotes in this book that I noted down that I really wanted to read back to you and really stuck out to me in this book. So this one, it says, each moment is a choice. No matter how frustrating or boring or constraining or painful or oppressive our experience, we can always choose how we respond. And I finally begin to understand that I too have a choice. This realization will change my life. So again, it goes back to her, just that mindfulness, that mental attitude that you can sit and wallow and just feel pity for yourself, or you can't change the past, you can accept it and move on from it. And I feel that's what she's done. So that really, really resonated with me. Did I even mention I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars? Don't think I did, but I did. And also I want to, at the front of these books, there's some pictures, which are really sweet. So these obviously were the 2 that they sent us. And there's one with the husband and with her sisters. And then at the back, sort of some pictures from the later years. And I really enjoyed this book. I really was enveloped in it and could put myself in that time, and I felt like you grew with her. You saw her as a teenager and having to experience all that so young, and then how she grows up and she turns her experiences into a way of helping people, and towards the end she actually she's done a talk with an army unit, and like 60 years prior, that same army unit, you know, different people, but the same army unit were the ones that liberated her from Auschwitz. So everything sort of came full circle there. And I think the final thing I just want to end on is one of the last quotes in the book. In fact, the last sentences in the book. And yeah, so before I read that to you, I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I've been rambling on, but I really, really enjoyed it. And she is such an inspirational woman. I know she's actually coming to the UK in October, and I really want to see like if there's any like events happening that I could possibly go to, because I think I'd love to hear her talk in person, because I think she's just so inspiring and so like pretty motivational, I'd say. So that was my review on The Choice by Edith Eger, and I will just read you the last couple of sentences of the book. And here you are in the sacred present. I can't heal you or anyone, but I can celebrate your choice to dismantle the prison in your mind brick by brick. You can't change what happened, you can't change what you did or what was done to you, but you can choose how you live now. My precious, you can choose to be free. And I'll see you in the next video, guys.